I may not be into giantesses, but that full-body Paizuri does look exquisite.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Seasonal Discharge. Today we are doing the Winter Anime Season 2024, and today I am joined by Tamika Likes to Draw.
Hello.
The first show we're going to be talking about is Solo Leveling. Solo Leveling is a manhwa, which means it's a piece of Korean media, actually. And it is probably like the most popular manhwa, right?
That is the first ever manhwa I've ever heard of, except for like maybe The Gamer.
Yeah. It's interesting that you know about the gamer because I did not. I kind of wonder if Solo Leveling was inspired by the gamer because it's kind of a similar premise.
I only know about The Gamer just because it was on the front page of Manga Dex or whatever the fuck it was called before they decided to go legit. Before they decided that they care about copyright.
Yeah, I think that I may have heard about Tower of God before I heard about Solo Leveling
hmm
because I have some friends who are really big on it. Oh, also 100 Demons. I don't really know anything about it, but I've heard of it.
Yeah, I've never heard of that.
I've heard it's good. Anyway, Solo Leveling, it's a system manhwa, which is the inspiration for my 100 manhwas videos, which I so often talk about. Basically, the idea of like a system manhwa is you take video game like mechanics and apply them to the real world. So
They have like the video game menus and experience.
yeah, it's like what if just one day you could start leveling up like an RPG but IRL?
Yeah, the first thing I ever saw that was like that was like this anime called Hidden Dungeon Only I Can Enter. But that wasn't that great. That was pretty mid.
Yeah, much worse than solo leveling. I feel like most isekai that try and do the leveling thing just do it infinitely worse.
Well, that show was just like, oh yeah, we're gonna like have being horny be the way that the character gets experience, man. Hell yeah. If he wants to increase his experience, he has to touch the girl's titties. Hell yeah.
Now, where have I heard that before?
Yeah.
Leveling isekai, they tend to just do it so much worse. It's like I feel like isekai they just can't comprehend, or at least older isekai. I think they're getting better about this, but I feel like they just can't comprehend the idea of growth. They have to start with the main character already being an unstoppable force. So you get situations like cheat skill in another world where he gets the ability to level, hits level 2, and then is already strong enough to take out any foe he faces. What's even the point of having a leveling system at that point?
Well, it's because they can't decide between being a wish fulfillment show that's about like immediate gratification and a show that's actually about no, you won't just have everything handed to you. You gotta work for stuff. You actually gotta fucking go out there and actually try and improve as a fucking person. This isn't a fucking fantasy
Yeah.
show. This is a show that's telling you go out and go to the gym and actually do shit.
Well, I definitely think there's an element of wish fulfillment to leveling manhwa. It's just more about like,
Well, the character still tends to be a badass in those too, right?
yeah. Well, like to quote shit, what's it called? It's one of the manhwa I've read. Wait, I'll just get out my phone and look it up.
Also, I just wanted to quickly clarify that Hidden Dungeon Only I Can Enter is not an isekai. It's actually just a regular fantasy show that the main character just so happens to wake up and have that system.
I feel like we've been getting a bit more fantasy shows that, like, they're still basically isekai, but they finally just drop the.
Well, that's like one of my biggest complaints about the fantasy genre in general is that it just feels like generic fantasy, and the generic fantasy that you get is the same type of generic fantasy you get in most isekais.
Yeah.
Character design is the same, environmental design is the same. They all rip off A1 Pictures' template in terms of faces. I hate that shit.
You know, to each their own, but I get it to an extent. Okay, I was thinking of Infinite Leveling Murim. To quote Infinite Leveling Murim, the main character in that wishes for a world where effort actually translates to results.
Yeah,
So I think that's kind of the central wish fulfillment of a leveling manhwa. It's that like I should be able, if I try really hard, I should get rewards immediately.
I suppose that's the appeal of games in general, right?
Yeah, for sure.
Only the difference is if it's a leveling manhwa that you're reading, you don't actually have to legitimately go through the effort of grinding everything, and you just get to live vicariously through this anime character.
Well, it's like you get the satisfaction of grinding everything, but in a much more polished experience. There's none of the bits where it just doesn't quite work and, you know, you encounter a boss that's a little too hard and it gets annoying.
And also, it's not like fucking an RPG where you have to stop for like 30 minutes to get decent enough levels to take on the next gym leader.
Well, actually, they do that. It's just satisfying when they do it.
Hmm. Oh wait, are like leveling stuff basically like shonen battle stories where the whole appeal is the training arc? The training
Yes.
arc is actually the main draw, not what happens after the
Yes.
training arc.
Absolutely. And that's actually one of my issues with solo leveling. Solo leveling, obviously, I've already read the whole thing, and it's the inspiration for my leveling manhwa review system, which is specifically that I I had some issues with solo leveling, but I guess we should probably get into actually what solo leveling is.
Yeah.
It takes place in the real world, in a version of the real world where just one day these portals started spawning that had like MMO RPG dungeons in them.
With loot in them.
Yes, with loot in them. If you kill the monsters, you get cool fantasy items and stuff, which is obviously useful. But if you don't kill them, eventually a dungeon break will happen and they will actually escape into the real world and wreak havoc. But at the same time, humans started like awakening to having magical powers. It's like a one time thing. You awaken, and that's the powers you get. There's no growth.
Well, the thing that really caught me off guard about the setting, because you said that it takes place in like the real world, is
Yeah.
in the opening of the anime, they show like people in like generic fantasy armor fighting monsters. So I was not expecting this to take place in the real world. I thought it was gonna be like another, because despite how popular solo leveling is, I know next to nothing about it. So I thought it was gonna be like in a fantasy setting. I didn't think it was gonna take place in the real world. And then I saw like, oh, once they were done showing those people in that generic fantasy armor and they cut to like the main character in his group, they just look like regular people. And there's like modern buildings. And I was like, are they LARPing? Are they LARPing as the RPG people? The ones who are in the armor? Why are they dressed like that?
The fantasy armor is because that's loot they're getting from the dungeons.
Oh,
It's like magic armor that can actually protect them against these monsters.
oh, just like Nvidia.
Yes, just like Nvidia. They've written it in a pretty realistic way where this immediately turned into a capitalist hellhole where they loot the dungeons for profit. And the main character, his whole thing is that he is the weakest hunter. He had his awakening, but it's like it made him just barely more powerful than a normal person.
Yeah,
A wage, not a wage slave. He's
he's
like
a
a
level.
working class.
They have levels, right? I think they say he's level 10. Or like, oh wait, was that before or after he learns the system exists? I don't know.
I forget. I mean, I know they have ranks. I think they have like A, B, C, D, E. That's what they usually do in System
Yeah,
Lava.
I think it was like D or something or E.
He's the lowest rank
Yeah.
because he is the weakest hunter. He's just barely scraping by. We see in the beginning, like, he almost dies fighting a trash mob.
Mhm.
While everyone else is just like easily coasting by in this dungeon, he's like screaming, fighting for his life in this visceral. And then they find a spooky door in the dungeon. And they conclude that it must be a double dungeon, which would have like super cool special extra loot and stuff. So they decide to go in further, which was not a very good idea because they enter this crazy boss room and get their asses beat and almost all killed by this evil statue god thing. But through the power of wits, they're able to pass like these challenges. And shit, what's the main character of this? Name? I should know this.
His name is Ayato because he looks like Ayato. Well, I will say that when I first started watching this, I was not the vibe that I got the first time was I was expecting it to be not like lighthearted, but I was not expecting it to end up being super edgy and violent the way that it did when they went into that second dungeon.
This is really violent. They have like some detailed gore as this statue is like cutting people in half and shit.
Yeah, I was like, oh, okay. I mean, it has like blood and stuff, but it's probably gonna be like tonally, I was like, oh, it's gonna be like Sword Art Online or something. It's like, yeah. I mean, I'm sure it'll have death, but I wasn't expecting it to be like that. And then all of a sudden, they're just getting fucking slaughtered.
Yeah. Obviously, it's like way more intense than I'm making it out to be in my rushed summary. But yeah, he barely scrapes by, and his remaining teammates abandon him. And just as he's about to get killed, the timer runs down and he passes whatever test this is.
And then it's revealed that all those people survived, which is like because basically there's this test where like the clock is counting down, and the main character comes to the conclusion that, oh, we're supposed to stay in here until the time runs out. We're not supposed to leave this circle because they're like surrounded by candles that are counting down. But then a bunch
Yeah.
of people, like some of the people in the party, are just like, "Fuck you, I'm leaving." And the main character ends up being the only one that's like there in the end. And I was expecting all of those people to be fucking dead after they chose to run away instead of remain within the circle, but they actually live.
I'll be honest, I really thought they died. I totally forgot they didn't die.
Yeah, like it's honestly kind of surprising. Like I genuinely thought they'd be dead, which I suppose uh yay. It means that the show is dark and edgy, but not super dark and edgy. I don't know.
Yeah, it just means that they have restraint.
Yeah, that's the word I was just about to say. They're not like, yeah, we're gonna go attack on Titan on this shit. We're gonna kill everyone.
Man, no spoilerino, but holy shit. It's rewatching this, it's just so clear how they did not plan what happens later in this anime or this story at all.
Hmm.
Like, this shit makes no sense in context of everything that's actually going on.
Actually, just looking through my notes, and one of the notes is how like literally as soon as the guy says that the reason why he gets involved in like dungeons is to like make money for his family or whatever, I immediately thought, yeah, that N word dead. And but for a brief second, maybe my expectations would be subverted. And then it's just like, nope. I think he dies literally, like literally the second he mentions that he has a family. He just gets killed. He just dies.
No, he doesn't die the second he mentions it. He isn't that the dude that
The curly hair guy. Well, at least that's what it says in my notes.
he's the one that like tries to get the leader killed, right?
I think it's during the part where they activate the statues and they start singing. So they're trying to stop those statues. They're trying to like meet whatever requirements to get those statues to be active or whatever. And then,
No, I think he runs. I think he's one of the first ones to run when they're in the circle.
oh, maybe I'm misremembering then. I can't remember.
Because they're trying to stop the statues from moving because it's like weeping angel rules. They only move if you're not looking at them.
Mm-hmm.
So as long as there's enough of them in the circle, they can just wait it out.
Oh yeah, he's the one who tries to go for the door, but the door isn't open yet, I think. So doesn't he actually get killed before he can get out?
No, the door opened as soon as this trial started. Because
Oh,
this is the test. This is the test of faith. So the door is open and the statues are coming, and he's the first one. He's like, "Sorry, dude, I got a family. I gotta get out of here." And then he leaves, and uh, Jin Woo, the main character, thinks like, "Bruh, I have a family too, you asshole."
yeah. One thing I found kind of interesting though is that despite the fact that this is a system show, they don't actually show the system at all until the second episode.
He gets his powers at the end of the first episode. He's barely alive and he passes the test, and then he gets like a pop up notification that's like, your heart will stop in 1 second if you don't accept these powers. And then he clicks yes.
Yeah. And the second episode opens with him like, "Oh, what the fuck? These menus are here."
Yeah.
Also, am I misremembering or did he say that there have been rumors of that happening to other people before?
Of getting menus?
Yeah. I feel like he might
Um,
have said that, but I don't know if I'm misremembering or if I just misunderstood.
I don't think so. You might be thinking of talking about second awakenings.
Ah,
They, yeah, they talk about how some people have a second awakening and get super strong because they awakened again.
hmm.
He's like only person in the whole world that has an ability that actually has the capacity for growth.
Yeah, that's usually, well, I remember it being kind of similar, like in the Hidden Dungeon Only I Can Enter. The protagonist is usually the only person who has like that sort of leveling system. I don't know if that's how it normally is or if other leveling stories are like there's other characters who have the menus and the gamification of life as well.
Um, I think generally they do let the other characters do it. It was more novel and solo leveling because it was kind of a first. But yeah, usually in system manhwa, a lot of the time it's just like a representation of like the magic system in that world, and they don't even like try and get into why there's a video game interface in this world.
Yeah,
Yeah. Which honestly, I think I prefer because this hasn't happened yet, but obviously you can immediately guess that it's going to be a problem down the line. That if you introduce characters that aren't capable of growth, obviously they're going to lose relevancy as the power creep happens,
yeah, Dragon Ball.
like Dragon Balls.
Yeah, that is pretty bad. I guess in something like solo leveling, the solution would just be to keep introducing higher ranked people over and over and not have any characters last.
And that is exactly what they do. And
Um,
it's really lame.
but what if you actually get attached to characters?
Then tough luck. You're never gonna see them again.
Bruh.
You're gonna really like them and get endeared to them in the arc they appear, and then they're just going to be forever an afterthought that appears occasionally to be like, I wonder what Sun Woo is doing. Or
Well,
Jin Woo.
it's extremely hilarious that I compared system stories to Pokemon because that sounds exactly like what the Pokemon anime does. Oh, we have this character that we met in this town and we're gonna act like we're like best friends with them, but they're never gonna appear ever again.
Ugh. Yeah, that's lame.
Yeah.
I feel like I've been pretty negative on solo leveling, so get this out of the way. I have a whole video about this, but I think that solo leveling, at least in the beginning, is an excellent manhwa. Like, easily a 10 out of 10. It totally sucks you in, and like I think I binged solo leveling in literally like a day. My issues with it only arise as it continues because, like I said, in my opinion, I think they did not plan shit. They are just totally making this all up as they
They
go.
are Toriyama-ing it.
Yeah, and it's really well, no, it's worse. They're Odaing it. They are absolutely doing some Destiny piece shit in solo leveling.
Damn.
Anyway, not to spoil anything. That said, I have to say I was kind of disappointed with the anime.
Well, you were going when you first told me about this after you just watched it, you were like you weren't like the biggest fan in how they changed the art style because it looked like they kind of moved it into sort of a generic A1 Pictures direction with the art style compared to the actual not light novel, manhwa. And the funny thing is, when I looked up the studio that made this, it literally just was A1 Pictures. So there you go.
I was comparing the two, and they actually don't look that different. Like the character designs are pretty close. But after further reflection, I realized I think the big thing that was throwing me off was the way they're colored. They're colored like a normal anime, but Solo Leveling actually has a very unique color palette. It's like a very unique rendering style that sets it apart from other stuff. I feel like they didn't really embrace that, and it totally hurts the aesthetic.
Yeah, remember when we were like autistically talking about the bag?
Yeah, we were comparing his backpack in the anime versus the manhwa. In the manhwa, it's like this bright, like almost
Neon.
neon green,
Yeah.
and then in the anime, it just looks like a normal green backpack.
Mm-hmm.
I'll probably put it up.
Well, with that being said, I think that for the most part it looks fine. It probably could look better, but it was decently animated.
It definitely had some really good animation,
Mm-hmm.
especially like the OP. Some of the stuff in the OP was like really good.
Yeah, I remember it being pretty good. It's been a while since I saw it though.
Yeah, they did change one of the really cool looking monsters into goblins, though, which was pretty cringe.
Lame. Oh, also you mentioned when we were watching it before, was it something like they were introducing some of the characters earlier or something? When they showed that girl?
Oh yeah, so this is my main problem with the anime is they totally fucked up the pacing for no reason.
Mhm.
The whole part where they enter the dungeon, we should not be seeing the outside world at that point. Because in the dungeon, that's like, it's pretty much a bottle episode. So the whole point is that we are supposed to feel trapped with these characters. They're in this super intense situation that they can't get out of. So taking us to see other people's POVs makes it feel like they're not really that trapped and like, oh yeah, they're gonna get out of it. I feel like that's immediately a giant fuck up to take it out of that. And yeah, to they took us out of it once to show this top ranked hunter that isn't going to matter for some time. They conveyed nothing with that scene, by the way. It's just her, and it's like, wow, she's really famous. Everyone's impressed with her. And then she runs away. Why did they include that? Literally pointless.
Filler content.
Yeah, and then the other thing they added was they showed the chairman of the Hunters Association, and they have like this exposition dump with him talking with some other guy about how, like, as you know, our world economy is powered by the gems from the monsters. As we often discuss and describe to each other, as we both know. And despite the fact they also give us just a full-on exposition from like the narrator that also tells us this, as they do in the manga, they just decide like, no, we're gonna tell them twice. Once through narration and once through clumsy exposition.
No, they have to really hammer it in. They want to make sure that you know, just in case you missed it. What if you went to the bathroom when they explained it the first time?
True. Make anime for zero attention, zero IQ viewers.
Yeah.
Let's go. Here's how you know they put zero consideration into any of the changes they made to this anime. They introduced the chairman guy cut away during the bottle episode.
Are you talking about the guy who's talking about the crystals or whatever that they're trying to find?
Yeah. He's got like a big scar on his face.
Yeah.
They introduce him during the bottle episode. And then when he actually first shows up in the anime, or in the I almost said dojin. In the manhwa. When he actually first shows up in the manhwa, they portray it the exact same way, where they do this slow reveal of like there's this representative talking to him on the phone, and you see like.
But you already know what he looks like.
Yeah, they show his face shrouded in shadow as if they did not fucking show his face a single episode ago. It's so dumb. They were like building him up.
It's for the people who missed that scene too.
They were building him up as like, oh, this guy's a big deal. But now he doesn't feel like a big deal because they already saw him just like chilling out.
Presented as a regular businessman.
Yeah, I hate that. I can't believe.
Yeah, that would be like if in Avatar: The Last Airbender, which is like the most apt comparison because they keep him shrouded in darkness and hide his face for like almost the entire series. They showed it like once at the start and then started shrouding him in darkness and hiding his face. I mean, a lot of people complain about the fact that the live action adaptation doesn't cover him at all, actually.
I can understand wanting to reveal him earlier. Like, if you've got all this extra content, then sure, it makes sense to like develop the Fire Nation characters further, but only if they did it well, which it seems like they didn't.
Which we may or may not be talking about on this podcast.
I digress. I almost feel bad about it because I'm going so hard on it, and in terms of adaptations, like obviously this has nothing on like God of High School, which they apparently just totally butchered.
Yeah, I heard
like it's
that
really
show had
close.
I heard that show had a strong start, and then they kind of like fucked up along the way.
What I've seen, to be clear, I'm not caught up. I decided to just save it so I could binge it all at once. But to be clear, like they're following it really closely. It's just like they somehow, like with pinpoint targeted precision, managed to fuck it up as much as possible with as little change as possible.
I think it's one of those things where like they're trying to like break up the pacing or have filler content so that you're not like you mentioned earlier with the dungeon, how in the original it focuses on that the entire time. But I feel like they want to have like a sort of change of pace over the course of the episode by not having the whole episode take place in this one setting.
No, I know exactly what they're doing, but what they're doing ruins the original material. It
Yeah.
totally takes you out of it. And there was like I just remembered there was something else that like they added like some extra exposition during the them being trapped in the dungeon that made them seem way stupider. Like the way they portrayed it is like they follow the commandments that they're following to not get killed, but then like at the same time they're still confused about like, wait a minute, do we need to follow the commandments? I don't know.
Well, I was just looking up the guy that directed this show, and it was directed by a guy called Shunsuke Nakashige, and near as I can tell, this might actually be. Oh, it's not. I was about to say this might be his first directing gig, but it's not. He's done some episode directing and uh, just animation directing as well. He's worked on a lot of shows. He's he's worked on Chainsaw Man, Arlon's favorite show.
That explains so much.
He's worked on Engage, Kiss, and the Heart of Kudoichi Tsubaki, etc. And, oh wow, we compared this to Sword Art Online earlier, and look at that. He's worked on Sword Art Online Elitization. And he's
Nice.
also worked on the Persona 5 animation, like anime adaptation, which I heard was pretty bad too. So there you go.
Damn.
It seems like this guy maybe shouldn't be getting any more work.
I think that's a little bit harsh.
I'm seeing that he's worked on shows like Monogatari and Attack on Titan, which are actually like pretty good shows. So.
Yeah, none of the shows you talked about looked bad. It's just a matter of his. It seems like, I guess he's not that great at adapting things to make them look close to their original style. But like Engaged Kiss looked really good. That
Yeah,
was like the only good thing about that anime.
well, I mean, I liked how Chainsaw Man looked too. I know that's a difference of opinion that we had, but yeah.
Yeah.
I also like how in the
Should have
heart of
been Studio Bones.
I also like how Tsubaki looked too. Although I never did return to that show, even though I said I would.
Damn.
Well, at the very least, I'm actually on Solo Leveling's page. It looks like the show is at the very least positively received. The scores are pretty high on it.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect people to be negative on it. Because,
Hmm.
like I said, it's not like they followed it pretty closely. So obviously, people are gonna be positive about it. Not everyone's gonna be as autistic as me about the differences.
Oh shit, the action director for this, because there's an action director, worked on Bleach the Thousand Year Blood War as an action
Nice.
director for that. And he also worked on the Near Automata anime, which is kind of like, all right, bud, okay, because that
Yeah.
looked.
I mean, to be clear, if you should read the manhwa, but if you're not gonna read the manhwa, you should watch the anime. But read the manhwa.
I think anyone who hasn't seen the manhwa, and to be fair, even manhwa fans, people who have read the manhwa, I think most people will probably dig this. It seemed,
Yeah.
I thought it was okay.
But I mean, even if it was a perfect adaptation, I think that you do lose something when you leave the breakneck pacing that you get from a manhwa. That's like part of like you just have to cut some things when you're adapting a manhwa to anime because it just feels so much slower when it's an anime. I feel like that's why a lot of people complained about a returner's magic should be special, even though the things they cut were perfectly understandable.
Yeah.
Anyway, I mean, I hope this does well because I'd like to see more system manhwa get, or just manhwa in general, get adapted. And it seems like they
Did you
are.
see that
So,
Tower of God season 2 was like a thing? I didn't even know Tower of God got a season 2. I don't know if it's from this season or if it just came out in previous seasons and I just didn't hear about it.
um, I feel like I vaguely remember seeing that that was a thing.
Yeah, because I saw someone tweeting about it and I was like, what the fuck? What?
I mean, the Tower of God anime starts like right where I stopped reading, and I intend to resume it eventually, so
Oh no, sorry. I'm getting a bit mixed. It's that a trailer for it came out on Crunchyroll.
huh,
Yeah,
I really thought it had come out. Interesting.
it's coming out this July.
Um, I give Solo Leveling, the anime, a 7 out of 10. It's pretty good, but you know, I've got my issues with it. Banger OP though. Really like the OP. Did you say what you actually thought of Solo Leveling, Coco?
I feel like I've been giving my
In its totality.
I feel like I've been giving my
Well, you've been
opinion.
giving your commentary, but like, what's your broader thoughts on it? Did you
Oh,
like it? Not like it?
I thought it was good. I mean, I think I mentioned this before before we recorded this that at the very least to have some kind of refresher, I was considering rewatching the episodes I watched because I watched the first 2 episodes. But then I was like, you know what? I kind of like the show enough that I'm kind of willing to just keep watching past what I've already watched. I never got around to it, but yeah, I thought the show was decent.
Good.
Yeah,
I'm glad you enjoyed it.
because I know that Solo Leveling's been. Am I misremember? When did Solo Leveling come out? The manhwa?
I mean, it's been a hot minute
I feel like I've
because
been
it's a pretty
hearing.
long manhwa and it's over now. So
I feel like I've been hearing people talk about it for a long time. Rough estimate, probably since around the time that I finished high school, which would have been like 2016. Um,
Jesus.
I feel like I've been hearing about it for quite a while, and so I've always had like a somewhat passing interest in reading it, but then I also generally tend not to really go out of my way to read manhwa. Like the only manhwa that I've gone out of my way to read so far is fucking Her Summon, and I even ended up dropping that shit because it kind of has a similar problem that you described with the other manhwa, which is that the pacing can get really slow and it can get kind of boring after a certain point.
Her summon peaks when he goes full Chinibyo, and I was perfectly happy to stop reading there. If you know, you know.
Yeah, but overall, I thought that Solo Leveling was fine. I'd probably give it a
Good.
7 out of 10 too. I'd probably have to watch more to determine whether I'd give it a higher or lower score.
Read Triple S Class Suicide Hunter. It's the best manhwa.
All right.
Next show is Chained Soldier.
More like Kino Soldier. This anime is a continuation of a trend that we've been seeing recently where a bunch of people realize that it's mega cringe that they're making harem stories, but they don't indulge in like the most obvious thing that people would want to indulge in a story where they want to project on a guy that's surrounded by a bunch of hot girls, which is that they want to fuck him.
Yeah.
Okay, like I feel like
Sure.
it's so obvious. It's so dumb that like and to be honest, the funny thing is I never really thought about it because I was like, you know what? Looking at Booba through the main character being a perv and glancing at the character's cleavage, that's enough. That's enough. But then after watching Digi's like Asterisk War review, I was like, you know what? It actually is kind of weird how like the protagonist of harem shows never get involved in any way at all with their harem. In fact, I was literally thinking about this today because I'm working, or I might be working, on a review for this other manga called Shinmai Mano Testament. And I was thinking about like Maybe the reason why they do that is because they don't want to make the main character look like a total scumbag. Like they want to have their cake and eat it too, which is that they still want like the main character to like eventually pick one girl and actually commit to that girl, you know, and not be like a
Yeah.
10 timing like piece of shit. So, anyways, Mato Seihei no Slave, a chained soldier, is a shonen battle manga. Um, it kind of has a similar. I was actually thinking about this. I have it written down in my notes that it has a similar. What do you call it? What do you call the start of a story or the incident? Something incident. To chained.
Inciting incident.
Yes, inciting incident to uh solo leveling, which is that the plot is there's these portals that are, all over the place in Japan, in the real world, and they form like this military that is stationed as some of these portals, or inside the portals rather, where they spawn. For some reason, well, okay, we know the real world reason. The reason why like these groups are comprised of girls is because it's anime and
Oh, to be clear, the portals in this are more like something like Stranger Things.
hmm
It's like an alternate dimension that is parallel to ours. So like you can accidentally like pop into it in a spot parallel.
Yeah. So they start this is military the correct term? I don't even know. It's like an army of girls. The
Task
in-universe,
force.
yeah, task force. Yeah, that's more appropriate. The in-universe explanation is for why it's all girls, I believe, is because the totally not devil fruits only work with women. Because they like there's these fruits that exist that they eat to give them powers that they use to fight against the monsters that come from this world that the portals lead to. And
It's like the Adam and the Eve.
yeah. And so one of the incidents is that the main character ends up in this world and he like ends up having to fight for his life until he meets one of the commanders from one of the units and to save themselves, he ends up making a contract with the commander that turns him into her slave. But being her slave grants him like actual powers. Like if he gives his chains. So I don't know if they've shown this in the anime. Well, they probably have by now, but in the episodes that we watched, um, because I think you only watched episode 1, right?
Yeah.
Basically anyone who touches his chain can like grant him like different kinds of forms. So, when it's the first girl, the commander, we see that form. And the way that it works is that he gets a massive boost in power, and then after the conflict is resolved, and this is where things get a little bit etchy, okay? After after the conflict is resolved and the main character powers down into his human form, it activates the reward system where, and this is where it feels a little bit rapey, I'm not gonna lie, the the girl is
as
compelled,
as all great anime.
yeah, the girl is compelled to reward the slave by indulging in the slave's fantasies. So for the longest time, like the commander was used to controlling monsters, so all she had to do was just like give them treats. But because it's a guy and guys have all sorts of weird and wacky desires, now she has to fucking make out with him and do all this other kind of stuff.
Can I just say I saw like a YouTube sketch a while back where it was making fun of fantasy authors where it's this fantasy author and he writes a magic system for a world that's all based around sucking toes. And I was just watching this and I couldn't help but notice this is literally the toe sucking magic system.
Well, it's
They're
actually funny that
doing the thing.
it's actually funny that you say that because in the opening of this show they show him licking her foot.
Literally, literally the toe sucking magic system.
I mean, I think a show that's a little bit closer to that would be Seikon no Quasar Stigmata, where the main character literally gets like powered up by sucking tits. Like like when he when he's weak, they put their booba in his mouth and then he gets a power up and then he fights. And I find it really funny that
Nice.
that show like actually takes itself like at all seriously. Um, so the interesting thing with this show is that it's kind of interesting because, like I mentioned earlier, it's like a continuation of a trend of shows where like they're like, oh wait, harem. Let's actually have the main character do stuff with the harem. Um, but this is probably one of the few instances where I can actually say, because I've read the manga, where I can actually say that like even regardless of if it had that content, the story itself is like actually kind of okay. Because the thing with shows, well, not only is it kind of okay, but like I mean, I have some feelings about the animation. I don't think the animation in this is bad per se, but I do think the manga looks better. Um, but like for example, with Harem Labyrinth, the only thing that show really has going for it is the fact that it's well animated and well drawn, like its NSFW scenes. But like the
Yeah.
actual show itself is boring as fuck. And then you have Redo of a Healer, which I mean, I'm not into rape and I'm not into brainwashing. And even if I was, the animation in that show is terrible. So, you know,
Yeah.
uh, but on the subject of the animation of this show, it looks alright, but I can't really get past
He
how
was CG, right? Was the
uh,
monster CG?
yeah, when he's in beast mode, it's CG. And I even
I remember thinking the CG looked all right.
yeah, well, it looks so right in the sense that like it's well animated, but it's still noticeable.
All I'm saying is I have to appreciate like I feel like there was a while where we were talking about every season like man, CG has gotten so good now. And then like for the last few seasons, I just cringe every time I see something CG pop up because it's always like they just took like a video game asset and didn't even try animating it. Like just the bare minimum, most lazy.
The most infamous example I can think of when it comes to CG is a show that we talked about last season, Under Ninja. Like the opening scene with those
Yeah.
military dudes, that looked
Yeah.
that was probably the worst CG I've ever seen, to be honest. It
It
looked
was pretty
so
bad.
bad. Yeah.
I've definitely seen worse CG in some of the isekai I've watched, but you know, not great either.
Yeah. No, but I mean, the action scenes in this are pretty good, even if it's
Yeah.
like slightly noticeable CG. But I was gonna say I can't really get past how slightly wonky the line art can look at times compared to the manga. I just accept that this is one of those things that will happen with anime because it's probably a bit more rushed. And then there's probably the fact that they use vector tools. And but you know, it happens. I'm looking through my notes to see what I have written down about the actual plot.
In my notes, my first bullet point is I love when someone pulls out their phone and explains the basic mechanics of the world straight to the audience.
Hmm.
So apparently that happened.
Yeah.
The designs in this were really cool. They kind of reminded me the monsters remind me of Hollows and Bleach. which I do love.
I wouldn't be surprised if that is intentional because this guy is definitely like inspired by I mean, first of all, uh I'm pretty sure Motto is a Shonen Jump joint, but also like you have stuff like the totally not devil fruits, but then there's also like slightly more of just like subtle references like fan service where like a main character is wearing a Dragon Ball outfit. I think this guy is a pretty big fan of Battle Shonen. So
It's always interesting to see like a super trashy piece of media and then you realize like wait a minute. The author of this is like super cultured.
yeah.
And this is just what they decided to use their talents for, which is honestly fine. Like, you know, it's its
hmm
own niche. Obviously someone wants it.
Oh yeah,
Coco.
I wrote in here saying I was wondering whether or not if Mato counts as an isekai show, because it is technically a story where a character ends up in another world, but he doesn't get trapped there because he technically does have the ability to go back to his world at any time.
I would not count this as an isekai at all.
Uh, it's
I'm
too
sure like if you wanted to
it's
be
it's
pedantic
too
about it,
it's too not generic to be an isekai.
yeah, it's just I'm never a huge fan of when someone's like, "Oh, this is technically an isekai because of like this technicality." But then when you look at the show, it's like so obviously not influenced by that genre at all.
Well, I suppose it depends. Like, does isekai just mean to go to another world, or does it specifically have to be defined by the using of these tropes?
I would call something an isekai if they go to another world. But if it's like a gray area, like, does this really count as going to another world? And it's clearly like not influenced by that genre at all, I would not call it an isekai. But you know, it's not really a I wouldn't split hairs over it. But
Yeah.
it is a thing.
One of the notes that I have written down is me talking about how this show, kind of like the previous shows I mentioned, has both a censored and an uncensored cut. Um, Actually, one of the things that I found kind of interesting about this being a Shonen Jump joint is that obviously Shonen Jump being, you know, a thing that's aimed at young kids. Um,
Yeah.
so even though the manga can get pretty explicit, they do actually censor a lot of the content even in the manga. Like they'll place like, for example, if there's a character whose bare tits are just out, they'll just censor them with like these white marks. Or like sometimes they won't even show like if the characters are making out, they won't even show like the characters tonguing each other. They'll cover that too. I mean, you can clearly see that that's actually what's happening. It's a close up of the two characters' mouths and their tongues overlapping over each other, but there'll be like these marks covering the screen. But because covering the panel, but because they have to do that because technically I don't think they could show that completely uncensored in a Jump magazine. But I'm not entirely sure because
That's kind of funny because like Chainsaw Man is shown in Jump, and they straight up showed a girl puking in Denji's mouth in that.
well, yeah, that's what I was going to mention is I'm actually not entirely sure what the rules are for this when it comes to Jump because I know that Dragon Ball has scenes where you see like in the Dragon Ball manga, there's a scene where you literally just see Bulma's bare tits in it. Like Krillin like pulls down her top. And there's like a scene where you see
Bruh.
like Master Roshi's like pornos and like on the magazine they have bare like Toriyama literally drew like the nipples on the tits. It's just fully uncensored.
Toriyama.
So I don't really or maybe their standards have changed since then. But Motto is kind of like a domestic girlfriend in that it has point chapters which exist almost entirely for the purposes of being fan service chapters, and I think these point 0.5 chapters are either like published somewhere else or like exist only in the volume releases, because they're basically just like straight up nothing but fan service chapters of like characters doing sexual stuff, but those ones actually like are uncensored, unlike in the thing. But because there's two different versions of the anime, a censored cut and uncensored cut, that means that in the anime, a lot of the content that is censored will probably just be straight up uncensored here, which means that if you are into Motto for the lewd stuff and you don't like the fact that some of the scenes are censored in the manga, then you will greatly appreciate the the fact that that content will probably be uncensored here. Because in the second episode, there's literally a scene where you just see like a character naked in a hot spring, and I was completely caught off guard because in my mind I was thinking, I don't remember seeing bare tits this early in the manga. And so I'm imagining that in the manga, it was probably like, you know how they usually do it where like the steam is censoring their body or something?
Yeah.
But like,
Yeah.
since this is the uncensored cut of the anime, it's like, yeah, oh yeah, show that shit. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's what you're here for, motherfucker. You're dirty. You're a dirty pervert.
True. Yes, you are.
Yes.
But not me. I'm a good boy.
Oh, right. I guess one of the things I also wanted to mention is that I'm kind of glad that this anime's and by extension the manga respects the intelligence of the audience a little bit, because one of the plots is how the main character's sister got sucked into one of these portals at one point, and what do you call it? A girl, like a girl demon, appears partway through the story. And at first, like, I thought they were gonna play it up as though it was a mystery who she was. Uh, and I was like, okay, that's a bit insulting because it's pretty obvious who she is just going off of her design. She has like the little hair strands that look exactly like how she did when she was a human, that look exactly like the
Yeah.
ones the main character does. So for a second there, I thought they were gonna try and play dumb, but no, they pretty much reveal it. I think right away at the end of the second episode, even the main character is like, "I'm pretty sure that's my sister." He's not 100% confident, but like he's like that. I'm almost positive that that might be my sister. So I kind of dig that. Um, let's see what else I have written here.
I wrote, wow, I'm surprised. I thought the main girl was going to be a massive bitch based on her design. And then I wrote on the next bullet point, never mind.
Never mind, as in she is a massive bitch.
Yes.
Well, she's kind of like a tsundere. Later on in, well, I don't know if this is spoilers, but later on in the manga, they do like show her being like more of a tsun, where she's not a huge fan of the fact that because she shares the main character's slave power, that means that other girls have to, you know, participate in the reward system. Although I will say one thing that I find funny about the manga is like how totally shameless it is, in the sense that like it's not just girls who are part of the reward system that come.
Oh, yeah, gay sex. Let's go.
That's not what I meant. It's not just girls that are part of the reward system who come onto the main character, because sometimes, like out of nowhere, girls would just decide that they like the main character and will start coming on to him. Like there's a character later on in the series who's like the older sister of one of the girls in the unit that he starts working for in this. Oh yeah, that's the one thing I forgot to mention about this plot, is that because the main girl realizes how effective the main character is as her slave, they bring him in to live in their what do you call it? Like, is it like a dorm? In their home.
I
Um,
think they call it a dorm, yeah.
yeah, and he has now been tasked with being the chore boy of that place. So he's
Yeah,
not.
that's when I changed that's when I changed my note.
Yeah, so it's
I
not.
was so mad on his behalf.
Yeah, it's not just that he's a slave in like a sense with like the power. He is literally a slave in that he does their cooking and cleaning for them for free. I don't think he's getting paid for this. I mean, I could be wrong, but
That is so cringe.
I don't think it's ever mentioned at any point that he's doing it. But the main character just accepts it because he's like, oh yeah, I'm glad to be doing my part to contribute to this because I want to be a
Simp.
hero. I want to be a hero and all this other shit. So it's like, yeah, no, dude, you're getting taken advantage of, and I don't think getting to suck on a girl's titty every once in a while is enough of a compensation for the fact that you're being made to do slave labor. Stand your ground, get paid.
Simp.
Yes, yes. One of the notes I have written here is okay, I may not be into giantesses, but that full body Paizuri does look exquisite. Because there's a scene where there's this girl called Shushu and her power, she's kind of like a tank type character. She has the ability to like hit really hard and like strengthen her body, but she also has the ability to be able to turn into a giant. And there's a scene where like oh yeah, so the way that the slave system works is that the main character has to lick the main character, the girl's feet, or do something like that. But because the commander isn't there, so he has to find another way to activate his like slave power, and he does it by like sniffing her underwear and shit like that. And he activates the power by doing that because he has to find stuff that will activate the power. It has to be something that's like vaguely reminiscent of her actual presence. And I guess that was a interesting and kind of creative way of going about doing that. And the scene literally just ends with him falling into her cleavage. And it's like a full body paizuri. And to be fair, it did actually legitimately look exquisite. Okay, that's all I have to say about this show.
I give it like a 6 out of 10. Obviously not my cup of tea, but I can definitely respect it. It's clear that some artistry went into this shameless fan service show.
I think at the very least you would definitely prefer this over the likes of something like Shinmai Mano Testament.
Oh yeah, I don't doubt that. This was not unbearable to watch. I was able to sit down and be somewhat invested.
Shinmai Mano Testament, like I mean it starts off as an ecchi, but like I mean I haven't read the light novel, but after a certain point it literally just becomes porn, from what I understand. And like
Yeah.
the only thing that even stops it from becoming a straight up hentai is the fact that they still censor the main character's penis. But like they start using
But
actual.
straight up hentai also censors the main character's penis. They legally have to.
That is true, which to this day makes me wonder how uncensored hentai even exists, but that is technically true.
I imagine they just uncensor it for the international releases.
There actually was one thing that I wanted to mention. I briefly touched upon it earlier about how it is a little bit rapey that the characters are like, the girls are like compelled to do this by the reward system. Because it is against their will. Like, they'll literally just be like, oh, Babaka, I'm not doing this because I want to. It's obviously because of the reward system. And like later on in the manga, they're like most of the girls just accept that they have to do this, But there's one girl in the manga whose whole arc is that she's trying to like tame the main character because she finds like the slave power like very intriguing. She also has like the most powerful beast that comes out of the main character because she's like one of the most powerful characters in the story. And like she feels legitimately humiliated every time she's forced to go through the reward system when she uses the power. And she's like so desperately trying to tame him. And I'm like, okay, she's like the one girl here who is not accepting this, which does make it feel legitimately rapey. Because in every other instance, you can just be like, well, the girls are consenting to this. They know what the contract is about. But every time this one character does it, she doesn't want anything to do with it.
Yeah, it's kind of weird because it's like there's the element of like, well, this is like life and death. Like, if
Yeah,
they don't use his abilities, they could die fighting the demon things.
yeah.
So,
I do find it kind of funny how okay, well, I'm getting a little bit too sidetracked. I feel like we've been talking about this too long already. But I do find it really funny how sometimes the reward system will like because I think like the transformation is timed. So sometimes the character will power down in the middle of like an actual fight, and so they have to do the reward system literally in the middle of a fight while the other characters are like fuck off and go quickly do because you can't stop it. Like you literally can't. Like there are times where they're able to successfully resist it, but as soon as the main character powers down, the reward just activates and you can't stop it. So,
yeah.
but yeah.
Uh,
Uh
it's fine. I wouldn't watch more of it, but it's
yeah,
all right. Next is Delicious Dungeon, which Coco did not watch despite my pleas.
I forgot.
It's kind of interesting. This is the second fantasy cooking anime from a big studio this year. Because we got, it was either last season or the season before, I think. We got Campfire Cooking in Another World. And that was animated by Mappa. This is animated by Trigger. The premise is pretty simple. It's a party of adventurers are raiding this dungeon, and the main character's sister gets eaten by a monster. I'm a little bit confused about how death works in this world. I think they like die and then respawn or something. I don't understand.
Ah, Scott Pilgrim logic.
They respawn outside the dungeon. So now, like, they have to get back to this monster and kill it before it finishes digesting the main character's sister. But since like they've lost all their gear and stuff, they don't have the funds to raid this dungeon. So the main character's plan is to use a monster cooking guide, get all their meals from just cooking monsters within the dungeon, and then they won't have to worry about money for food. And it becomes clear pretty quickly that this is just like something he's into. But yeah, that's the whole show. It's just like, it's like really well realized world building about like the anatomy and stuff of these monsters and how you can cook them, which is pretty interesting. But here's the thing. This show is so thinly thinly vor fetish bait.
God damn.
Like, okay. Well, I didn't even think about the fact that the sister is getting digested, but like now in hindsight, like, oh, the sister's getting digested. Then like every episode that I watched, someone got partially eaten at one point. There's a female adventurer in the party. She's the one who's like she finds eating monsters really gross and she doesn't like it. I feel like every episode she was getting vored by something before they came in to save her.
Yeah.
uh, I guess that's really all there is to it. It's a very well animated, well done fantasy cooking anime.
That is the author's thinly veiled fetish.
Yes, and it repulses me.
Hmm.
I guess I'd give it like a 6 out of 10, but I'd never watch this again.
I did not know what vor is until for some weird fucking reason when I was a kid, whenever I used to look up Sonic fan art on Google Images, there was this one artist who was really obsessed with drawing Sonic characters eating each other, and like the character would become like massive.
Yeah, there's a lot of that in the Sonic fandom for some reason.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really don't like vor. There's
Hmm.
something about it that just makes my skin crawl.
Well, they're eating each other.
It's one of the last fetishes I'd ever want to be into.
It
I
brings
like I don't like seeing vor because I'm scared that I'd like somehow get into it. I don't want to be into vor.
Well, it definitely brings a whole different meaning to the term eating out. Ha ha ha, I'm a genius. I'll be hero week.
Also, for the record, it also really feels like like thematically the way the main character is like he really likes monsters. He like really respects monsters and thinks they're cool. So it kind of feels like an expression of his love for monsters that he's eating them. So he's also voring monsters.
This sounds like a very interesting show for that artist that traumatized me.
Yes. I will never watch this again.
Hmm.
Next is Metallic Rouge, which I think you're going to have to summarize, Coco, because I could not tell you a single thing about the plot of this.
Oh, well, this was definitely an anime, all right. Fuck! I actually forgot to get the thing from Anilist. Let me do that quickly. Because I couldn't tell you what this anime is off the top of my head. Like they just they don't there is no attempt from this anime to even try to explain what the fuck is going on. It's like, oh,
Yeah,
all of a sudden there's robots and they need to inject themselves with like a serum to keep on functioning because if they don't, they die or something. Maybe there's also a robot racism plot, I think. The main character.
it may or may not be a drug. We seem to have a bit of a conflict on whether it was supposed to be a drug allegory.
Yeah, I'm not really sure about that either. Robots that are trying to like live amongst humans or something, and there's like a specific group of robots. Oh, the robots are called Aeons. There's like a specific group of robots that are like being hunted down by this other group, and like okay, so when the show like starts, at first I thought it was gonna be like a mystery show where like the show was gonna be about trying to figure out the identity what they refer to as the red gladiator at the
The
start.
Ava,
Yeah,
the one that looks like an Ava.
the fucking yeah, the suit looks like an Ava mech, which incidentally is part of the reason why I ended up watching this. But um, so I thought it was gonna be about unveiling the identity of that because that red gladiator person was going around killing some of the Aeons. I guess this guy's like the villain, the guy who looks like Vash the Stampede from Trigun. He's like trying to figure the identity out of this. But then it's just sort of revealed at the end of the well, toward the end of the episode that the Red Gladiator is in fact the main character that we've been following for most of this episode, a girl named Rouge. And I was very disappointed because obviously she's not a big titty Batgirl, and that's the only Rouge that matters. But
Damn.
but
True.
yeah, no, I didn't know what was going on. I felt like I said this when we were watching it, but I actually had to double check to make sure that this was actually the first episode because
We both went through this. Coco apparently said this and I just didn't hear. And then I independently was asking her like, "Are you sure this is the first episode?"
yeah. And just to be extra sure, I even went on AniList because I was like, you know what? Because I downloaded the episode from Nyasi. I was like, it's very possible that like the person who uploaded this on Nyasi just like fucked up or like even you know got the episode number wrong just to troll. But I checked on Aniwave. It was the first episode. I don't know if this is how like the manga it's based on starts. Uh, a
Oh,
part
is
of me,
this based on a manga? I just
yeah,
assumed this was an anime original.
no, this is based on a manga. It's very possible that the manga doesn't start like this because I know that there's some anime that like try to throw you into the conflict first, to like
Yeah.
entice viewers and then do the exposition for like the second episode. But in this case, I think it was a bad choice because I didn't see any reason to be invested in this conflict because I didn't know what was going on. So
Yeah.
okay, so this is the description from AniList. Metallic Rouge takes place in a world where humans and androids coexist. The story follows Rouge, an android girl who is on a mission on Mars with her partner Naomi. The mission is to murder 9 artificial humans who are hostile to the government. And that's the plot. And I imagine, okay, so the Vash Stampede looking guy is one of the 9. That tan girl, is she tan or black? I don't fucking know. She's also one of the
I feel
9.
like they're usually tan when it comes
Yeah,
to anime.
and that's the first fight, the first person, the main character, the Metallic Rouge fights because they have their real names. Yeah, I don't know. To be honest, I didn't really care for this first episode's plot. The strongest point for this anime was definitely the animation and the presentation. I felt like it was pretty well directed. I felt like I don't know, it looked pretty good. Although the setting, as well as the fact that this is a story about trying to find and kill these artificial humans, it did give me Blade Runner vibes. It felt like a Blade Runner ripoff a little bit.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I haven't seen the original Blade Runner, but yeah, I also got that impression.
I haven't seen 2049. I've only seen the original.
2049 is great, and you should watch it.
Yeah,
Although it ends on a cliffhanger, and it's never going to get a follow up because it bombed,
fuck
sadly.
it.
Yeah, really depressing.
hmm
Really depressing that that's the movie that bombs and they take away, you know, a bad lesson from. Meanwhile, Morbius bombs, and we've got 3 more Spider-Man villain movies on the horizon.
Yeah.
Anyway, yeah, I have to agree with you. The art for this and like the animation looked really good. It looked better than it had any right to be. My main takeaway from this is that I'm really upset that this this shit. I mean, no offense to it. It could be that it gets better, and I just need to give it my full attention. But this shit gets amazing animation, and Pluto, an absolutely phenomenal piece of storytelling, gets the most half-assed, ugly, typical anime animation with the ugly ass CG robots in the worst moments they could have them. The ugly ass CG tornado Yeah, what a great idea. Make the main villain of the show an ugly CG
Okay,
tornado.
well, I haven't seen Pluto yet, but from what I'm getting from this is that I should stick with what I was originally intending to do, which is just read the mangas.
I mean, I will say I was a bit hard on Pluto's score when we reviewed it last season.
Yeah, I
Was
think
that
so.
last season? Yeah. Well, I was a bit hard on its score when we reviewed it last season. I mean, I stand by it. It is missing like that one killer track, but I do think there's some really good tracks in Pluto's score. So, especially like the main theme. Oh my god. Such a banger. Yeah. Pluto, 9 out of 10. This show, uh, zero out of 10, which is unrated on Mal because I cannot rate something I know nothing about.
Yeah. Well, this anime was made by Studio Bones, which is a studio that has some credits. They did My Hero Academia, Mob Psycho,
Okay, why would you use My
and
Hero as the example of them being a good animation studio?
Noragami.
But
The director
Soul
behind this
Eater.
is a guy called Motonobu Hori, who was involved with Mob Psycho, the Berserk Golden Age movies, and Gurren Lagann, which all look pretty decent.
I would say Mob Psycho looks a little bit more than decent. It's like one of the
Yeah,
best animated anime out there.
yeah, it's pretty good. So that would explain why this show doesn't look bad.
That does make me wonder, like, if they really pulled out all the stops for this anime, it almost makes me feel like maybe I should give it another chance just because, like, why else would they go so hard if it doesn't get better?
Well, I'm looking at the score distribution for this on AniList, and its mean score is 6 out of 10, which kind of gives me the
Damn.
impression that it's slightly above mid.
Then why did they go so hard? I don't understand.
Well, let me take a look at the manga. Wait, what? The manga is not released yet.
So this is an original anime that they're making a manga for post hoc.
The manga starts publication on March 7th, which is a few days from now.
That is bizarre.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure what this story is there. It's very weird.
Well, that makes more sense to me though, because I feel like usually when you watch these really nice looking bad anime, it's because it's an original anime and like they didn't know it was going to be bad.
Yeah. I I I I mean, I don't know. A part of me feels like, well, maybe I'm a little bit intrigued to actually find out what's actually going on. But on the other hand, I'm just like, nah. That's pretty
Yeah.
much all I have to say about that show.
Yeah, if it has a 6, I don't think I'd want to watch more.
hmm
Next up is another one that only I have seen to my chagrin. The seventh time loop. The villainess enjoys a carefree married life to her worst enemy. You might be thinking, oh, why am I talking about this? It sounds bad just from the title. So let me just start with the fact that this is actually the show of the season, in my opinion. Easily the best show uh, that started this season. Not as good as Marshall, but among the shows that began this season, easily the best show. And even if you're not interested in watching the whole thing, I think the first episode is just worth watching on its own. With that said, this show is a regression show. So it's okay. For one, it's are you familiar, Coco, with like the otome genre or like villainous shows?
Yeah, there's a few that have come out in previous seasons that I've always
Yeah.
intended to watch but never really got around to.
So to those unfamiliar, they're basically like the girl equivalent of isekai, fantasy. A lot of the time, it'll be like a visual novel game that a girl just suddenly finds herself in, and she's surrounded by like a reverse harem.
Mm-hmm.
And then like with like villainous anime, a lot of the time it's like about showing everyone wrong. You know, everyone's out to get the villainous, and then she, now that a young girl has taken over her body, is super cool and nice, and all the guys fall for her, and then the doubters are like, "What? How could she land a hottie like that? That that wench?" I framed her for so and so.
Yeah.
Yeah. So this show, it's pretty in vain with that kind of thing. It's a regression. Uh, so uh, the main thing is that uh, this girl, it's like a Groundhog Day type thing where every time she dies, she returns to the pivotal moment in her life when the prince called off their engagement, framed her for bullying, and kicked her to the curb. And at this point, she has already gone off and lived a long, fulfilling life 6 times. And as the title implies, she is now on her 7th loop.
I feel like if I had to go through that, I would be insane. I'd just be like, Jesus Christ, just fucking let me die already. Fuck's sake.
Well, the difference between you and this girl is that she's actually super based, and she lived an awesome, fulfilling life for every one of her lives. However,
Man.
the main hook for this show is that in every single one of her lives, she died in the same war. Every one of her lives, this war starts, and she gets swept up into it and dies, no matter what she happens to be doing. And this war, no one really knows why this prince started this war. It's kind of this mysterious thing. In her last life, she actually was a soldier, and she got killed by this prince, who is like a super badass sword fighter and stuff. So starting her next life, she's pretty over the whole getting her engagement called off thing and all that. So she's just like speed running it. Everyone is like, "What the fuck?" As this lady is just like, "Oh yeah, yeah, you're calling off the engagement. I will now jump out of the balcony to leave this place as quickly as possible." And as this is happening, this prince, uh, the prince that started the war, is actually on the premises, and he sees her doing all this shit, and he's like, "Oh my God, that's crazy. I have to marry this chick. I am immediately smitten with her." So he proposes to her, and she is like, "Well, wait, this is awesome actually, because like this is a chance for me to finally figure out what the deal is with this war that keeps fucking killing me."
Yeah.
So she, with her own ulterior motives, goes off with this prince to this nation to try and figure out what his deal is. And oh my God, like, here's the thing. Just on paper, looking at all the things that happen in this show, it's not like super out there. A lot of it is somewhat tropey in standard to the genre, but they just do it so well that it elevates it multiple points to be going from like a 6 to like a 9. Like the romance between her and the prince, really well done. He's he's a bad boy, but she's a a badass who can, civilize this wild man.
You can fix him.
It all just works. There's so much chemistry there. And the main character is super likable. You get like all the benefits of like the returner genre, where all this meta knowledge she has makes her like super competent, and everyone's all like constantly surprised by all the crazy stuff she's able to do. And then like the mystery that just perfectly perfectly stringing you along with the little hints as to like, ooh, what's the prince's deal? What's his mysterious past? Perfectly executed. I love this show. 9 out of 10. I would recommend this to anyone.
Fantastic.
I'm just shocked that I would never expected going into it to come out of it thinking it's the show of the season, but it really is. Next is Gushing Over Magical Girls. Coco, why don't you talk about the plot of this one? The plot in air
Oh
quotes.
man. So I imagine you're like super into anime, right? You might like One Piece or Dragon Ball or Evangelion or Gurren Lagann or some Killer Kill or some shit like that, some stupid shit like that. Well, let me tell you something, man. That shit doesn't even compare to this absolute Kino, okay? Your favorite anime, whatever anime it is garbage compared to the masterpiece, okay? That is gushing over magical girls, okay?
Coco, you are not beating the allegations here.
So this is a show that I watched because I saw guys like Drax hyping it up. It's like, oh man.
Drax liked this? Oh
Wait,
my
no. No,
god.
not Drax. I'm thinking of someone else. Someone in
Oh.
Digicord or Justice or one of those anime servers. Drax actually specifically said that he wasn't into this show because it's all girls, there's no guy, and he finds it very difficult to project onto sexual situations where no penis is involved.
I get that.
This is a show where our main character is a massive fangirl of magical girls, and one day she gets approached by what she thought was the mascot of the Magical Girls organization. The mascot gives her a proposition to make her what she thought was, you know, a magical girl. Then she
Yes.
realizes, hey, my outfit looks super lewd and like inappropriate for someone that's supposed to be a hero. And it's in that scene where she learns from the mascot that the mascot isn't actually the mascot of the Magical Girls organization, but is actually the mascot of the villains organization. I don't really know how our main character made this mistake because the one for the heroes is white and the one for the villains is black. I don't know what the people who made this are
Look,
trying to
she
imply.
was just hyped. she was hyped and looked past all the warning signs, all right?
Yes. And I don't know what the writers behind this are trying to imply by making the black one the villain and the white one the good guy. But anyway,
True.
so she has been given the offer to become a villain. And initially, she's kind of against this, but then she finds herself being thrust into a situation where she has no choice but to defend herself against the magical girls. And she defends herself. Oh, get ready, because you're not ready for this, okay? She defends herself by summoning a tentacle plant monster that proceeds to molest. Okay, to mol.
It immediately tentacle rapes them in extremely lewd fashion.
Yeah, you
With
can.
just like little sensor bars covering up, but it looks like it's like straight up tentacle raping them. For the
Oh,
record.
well, I watched the uncensored version. I didn't even know there was a
Ah,
censored version.
I didn't know there was an uncensored version.
Yeah.
So it
And
doesn't tentacle rape them.
there there's actually a really funny scene where like the vines are like wrapping around one of the girl's breasts, and they look like giant hands, where like like the OK sign. Just imagine if like someone had giant hands where they could fit like an entire tit between their finger and their thumb, and it looked like that. And I found that kind of funny, to be honest. But then there'll be like all these close-ups where it's like, oh, there's a close-up of the girl's panties, and you can see the vine rubbing against their private parts, and I'm like, oh, okay, this is interesting. I just wasn't expecting it to be this, to be honest. Like, I knew that it
I
was.
wasn't expecting it to be this lewd. Like, it's so lewd.
Well, I knew it was gonna be like a sexual fan service show, but like, I don't know. You know how like some anime just have like the girl character who's like a perv, and she just like starts feeling up other girls? That's
Yeah.
what I was expecting this type of show to be. I wasn't expecting it to be a show where like the main character just summon. 'Cause as soon as I saw the second conflict go pretty much the exact same way the first conflict between the main girl and the magical girls. Like as soon as I saw the second conflict go pretty much the same way, which was her summoning a bunch of monsters and then those monsters starting to touch the magical girls inappropriately, I realized that, well, I mean, okay, I might be wrong for assuming this, but I'm probably not wrong. I realized that this is probably like what most of the conflicts between the villains and the magical girls is going to be like.
Yeah.
It's just going to be like,
This is the central loop of content for the
yeah,
show.
yeah. And I was like, I'm not really into this. I mean, for one, I'm into human on human stuff, and for two, I generally prefer my content to be consensual. And yeah, I was not into this at all.
Coco,
What?
why did you make me watch this?
Hey man, we were talking about how watching garbage is how you maximize content for the podcast. So there you go.
This was too cursed.
I was not a fan of this at all. There's no plot here. Earlier, I was talking about how even if you're a sexual anime, even if you have good sexual content, you still have to find a way to engage me with your plot and your characters. I was not interested in these characters or this plot, and I don't want to watch an anime that's a loop of molestation. I don't.
The one thing I will give this anime, the one inkling of artistic value I could say it has, is it does perfectly encapsulate the feeling of post-nut clarity, because the main girl is like the demon on her shoulder is trying to convince her like, oh, just like you just let it's totally fine. Like it's fine. This is good for the magical girls too. You're giving them something to do. And then she finally gives in and then gets way carried away, starts like spanking their asses and stuff.
Yeah, it turns out that she's actually a sadist. And that's the reason why she was chosen and given the specific powers that she has. Like her wand is called like dominate something. Like she's meant to be a femdom. So,
Yeah. And then once like she does her business and then the magical girls get away and then she just feels just crushing guilt over molesting the magical girls and is like, oh, like why did I do that? I'm supposed to love magical girls.
yeah.
And then she does it again.
It's revealed that like she's not even really like a fan of them. Like the mascot is just like, no, your love for them is actually just like a twisted desire to like break
Yeah,
them
well
that you
that's what the mascot says, but
have.
like she internally she never is like, oh, I've realized that I don't actually love them. She's obviously conflicted about it. Like she doesn't want to hurt them, but then once like she starts, she like gets into it and is clearly like super turned on by
Yeah.
tormenting the magical girls.
So one thing that kind of annoyed me a little bit was the fact that the main character and the magical girls, they all go to the same school. Now, this wouldn't bother me that much if it wasn't for the fact that they don't cover their faces at all, and they should totally be able to recognize each other when they go to school together.
This is how I know you were not paying attention, Coco, because they literally say in the first episode, I wonder if that villain girl goes to our school. And then the other magical girl says, well, maybe, but we wouldn't even know because of the magic that keeps us from recognizing them in their villain form.
Well, that's fucking stupid.
They literally just straight up say, yeah, there's magic that keeps us from recognizing their face.
Anyways, fuck this show. I'm throwing out all the principles I have when it comes to art. If you like this, you're a potential rapist. And KYS. Next show.
I would not tell anyone to KYS themselves over watching the show.
No, that was a joke. That was a joke.
But I would give it a 3 out of 10. I only give it a 3 because it was really well animated, just in all the wrong ways.
Yeah. You know what? We here at TSD, we don't kink shame. If this is your thing, uh, sure, why not?
But do check the hard drives.
Yeah.
Next is Monsters, the the One Piece spinoff. The definitely intended to be a One Piece spinoff anime by Eiichiro Oda.
So this Monsters Mercies 103, this is based on a one shot that Oda made well, not way before, but before One Piece.
Oda put out several one shots, which it's basically like pilots for
Yeah.
a manga before he finally got one accepted to be published as One Piece.
He made two. There's like a manga volume called Wanted that's basically just like a compilation of all the one shots he did. I kind of wanted to get my hands on that, but the annoying thing is there is no English version, which is like really cringe. There's a German
Just learn to
version.
read Japanese.
There's a German version for some reason, but
Just learn German.
no. I don't want to learn how to speak Nazi. But so this one shot has basically been retroactively turned into a prequel to One Piece. A lot of people speculated even before the like, because I don't know if this was confirmed by Oda before this. I don't think it was. Because I do remember a lot of people speculating whether or not the Ryuma from Monsters was the same Ryuma that we see in Thriller Bark, and by extension in the flashbacks of Wano, where he looks remarkably like Zoro. A lot of people argued, no, it's a character that's probably inspired by Ryuma from Monsters, but it's not the same character. But this ONA basically like retroactively is like, yeah, it's the same character.
Okay. Can I just say I I was I was gonna hold off on saying this before I got the positive stuff out of the way. But can I just say it's so fucking cynical. I was actually kind of enjoying Monsters right up until the end. And I just cringed so hard when suddenly Zoro appears, and it's like, oh, did you know One Piece? You like One Piece, right? I can practically see the executives with dollar signs in their eyes at the thought of milking one more drop of content out of Oda's previous works. Oh, terrible. It's so they straight up ruined it with that ending. in
The
my
funny thing
opinion.
is, I actually liked the transition of like him holding the sword to him like passing it to Zoro. I actually thought that was kind of cool. I actually like that scene.
No, see,
Uh,
my problem with it is that this is a pilot. Like, it doesn't come off as like, oh, look, this is like a little story about this samurai that used to exist. No, this is the pilot to an anime. And then at the end of the pilot, they just have this little transition just slapped on to be
mhm.
like, One Piece. You
Yeah, I
love One
mean
Piece, don't
that
you?
that's them like sealing the deal and being like, yeah, these two stories definitely take place in the same universe. I mean, for one thing, one, I thought that this story was going to take place in Wano. It doesn't. Two, it's never mentioned that Ryuma is from Wano in the actual story itself. It's only mentioned that Ryuma is from Wano in like like the description on an AniList and other websites. So the only thing that ties this to One Piece is the ending and the fact that Oda has just decided retroactively that this story is a prequel to One Piece
Yeah.
because obviously that was not the original intention.
Barring that, I liked it okay. I'm definitely glad that it didn't get picked up because I definitely don't think this was as good as One Piece's pilot. I'm sure like if Oda had gotten picked up, this would still be an anime that people like, but it's definitely not on the level of One Piece.
Yeah, the Romance Dawn, because there's two Romance Dawn one shots. I liked both
They're
of them.
both better than this.
Yeah, they're both better than this. And I hate the fact that the Wanted compilation only has Romance Dawn version 2. Fuck them for doing.
The plot of this is we didn't really talk about the plot. The plot of this is super Oda-ish.
I mean, the story is literally structured like a like a One Piece arc.
Yeah, yeah. There's this samurai guy, and he's hanging out at this bar, and I guess I miss like the chick that owns the bar. I guess saved this guy's life, uh, and then he bumps into this other swordsman.
Well, she decides to give him food for free or something.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
missed that part. So the swordsman bumps into a scabbard and he's like, "Asshole! That's like, that's a breach of swordsman etiquette. I challenge you to a duel." And then the other guy owns him, and the chick reveals that this other guy like saved her when her village was destroyed by a dragon attack. So this dude is like super chivalrous, super cool. And then the samurai leaves and he bumps into another guy. He challenges that guy, but then that guy is like, "What the hell? You killed me!" And then there's like a sword in his stomach, even though the samurai didn't stab him. And he's like, "You wanted my dragon calling horn, but I won't let you have it." And then he blows the horn, and everyone's like, "What the fuck, dude? Why'd you make him do that?"
Yeah.
So then they like evacuate the town, and everyone's pissed off at the samurai and is blaming him. And the chivalrous swordsman comes in and he's like, I will fight the dragon. I have beef with this dragon."
Okay, this is the part where I almost immediately predicted how the story is gonna go. Like in my mind, I was even thinking of this as like a joke. I was like, man, wouldn't it be kind of funny if it turned out that the guy with the horn and the knight guy or whatever were like in cahoots? And I was thinking that as a meme because I thought that the way the story was actually going to progress was that the samurai and the fuck, what's his name? the the guy with the mustache. We're
He's
gonna
like a musketeer type
Yeah.
dude.
I thought they were gonna set aside their differences and fight the dragon together. That's what I thought
Yeah,
was
I
gonna
thought that
happen.
too.
But but in my mind I was like, oh man, wouldn't it be kind of funny if and that's exactly what happened.
Yeah, the chick is just like walking down the street, and then she happens to see the fat guy that stabbed himself and the musketeer.
The samurai tries to stop tries to stop her from seeing that because she knows,
Oh yeah,
yeah, because he
yeah,
knows it'll just like break her if he finds out that like her home village, because it turns out that her village was destroyed by the dragon, and like she thought that the musketeer guy like saved her, but like I mean, in a way he kind of did, but he only did it just so he could use her to gain like favor amongst people and make himself look like a
yeah.
hero, and he's actually the one that killed her parents.
Yeah, the grift, as they explain to each other while laughing about how evil they are, extremely One Piece villain coded fashion,
Yeah.
is that their whole thing is they blow the flute and then are like, oh no, the dragon's coming, so everyone has to evacuate. Then they loot the town, then leave, and it gets destroyed. And yeah,
Yeah.
they just happen to stumble upon the girl, and it's like, oh, let's get some clout. Let's get
hmm
some clout for saving this young girl that we actually
They
caused
get
the death of everyone
they
she loves.
actually are able to summon a dragon with the horn, and
Yeah,
they get the dragon to like burn the town down, and then anyone
yeah.
who survives they kill by hand.
But anyway, so I didn't really understand why like suddenly the samurai was able to annihilate the musketeer
No,
guy when
the
before
at
he
the
got
end
bodied.
at the end it's implied that he's actually a pretty, because remember at the start when they were talking about, oh, they say that he's even more powerful than the king. So Ryuma himself isn't aware of the title, but Ryuma is the king. That's who they're talking about. Not like, not he's not an actual king. Like the king is a title because of how strong he is. And at the end, it's revealed that Ryuma is the one that they call the king,
Yeah.
in terms of swordsman. So it's
I
implied
just
that,
don't get why he pretended to be weak in the first fight.
yeah, I mean, the whole thing kind of reminded me of like a shittier version of Jaya in One Piece. The main
Yeah.
character is like getting shamed by everyone there. He lets himself get bodied. Then, like, someone that he kind of cares about gets hurt as a result of the actions of the villain. So he's like, okay, I'm gonna go body these people now.
Yeah.
And now it's time for me to break out. Oh, wait,
Then
what
he
are you
kills
saying?
the dragon, by the way. He
Yeah,
just
he kills the
he
dragon.
just slices its head off really easily.
Yeah.
Sorry,
And
go on.
now it's time for me to break out autistic Coco and talk about the animation of the show, because
Oh yeah, it was really jarring seeing like the Oda art style and a different animation style.
the animation I think was okay. It kind of did the similar thing I was mentioning earlier, which is that the line art looked a little bit wonky, but at this point that's just a thing that I have to learn to overlook when it comes to anime. I was actually surprised that this wasn't animated by Toei, because it's not. It's done by a studio called E&H, a studio I've never heard of. The reason why I was surprised to learn that it wasn't Toei that did this is because I feel like it does kind of look like Wano era One Piece.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not quite as high quality, because Wano era One Piece looks pretty fucking good, but although towards the end there are like some pretty good like action cuts when like Ryuma is like actually fighting and stuff. But the reason why I say I have to break out autistic Coco is because this is a one shot that was drawn in Oda's pre-time skip art style in the actual one shot, and they went with the post the post time skip art style in this animated adaptation,
Yeah,
which
that's mega cringe.
so
Why does no one respect OG Oda? OG Oda is better than modern Oda. I'm sorry.
I hate it so much. Like again, it reminds me of how like all those like One Piece, like when they made the animated they made those movie versions of like East Blue, and it's in the
Yeah.
post time skip art style, and I hate it because I really like the cartoony like art style that Oda had back in the day. And when I see shit like this is exactly why I start thinking to myself, that One Piece remake that's being wait, what's the studio that's making that One Piece remake? I forget. That it's gonna fucking well, it probably won't suck, but it's not gonna look like what East Blue should look like when they do East Blue, and I'm not gonna like it. Okay, I hate it. Do the art
Yeah.
style correctly. Make the eyes fucking massive and all the other shit. that that is that art style.
Yeah, it kind of goes into the whole conversation of how anime tends to water down the art style of manga, but then it's kind of muddled by also like the fame of One Piece is another factor.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I also wrote down in my notes the fact that this got animated and the fact that there's already been a One Piece remake announced, despite the current one not even being over, kind of leads me to
That's insane. I can't believe they're pulling that shit.
yeah, it's wild. But yeah, it says kind of leads me to believe these people are desperate to milk as much out of Oda as they can, knowing One Piece is about to end.
Yeah.
Which is definitely true. In fact, they're probably gonna be like to Oda, like, hey, so your other one shots, can you like find a way to like connect those to One Piece too, so that we can like make animated ONAs and like pretend that they're actually related to One Piece and we can use the One Piece name to like get people to watch them.
Well, it's funny because if you think about it, they really missed a money making opportunity here because they could have adapted this into a full anime
Well,
where they
that's
just,
what I thought this was going to be. So when I
like
went on
Toriyama style, just ask him like what was gonna happen, and he just gives like the broad strokes, and then they adapt that.
when I went onto Netflix, because when I watched it on Netflix, this was like a couple weeks after it already come out. So I was expecting there to be like 3 episodes or something, and there was just one, and I was kind of confused. And then I went onto AniList, and then I saw that it was an ONA, and I was like, oh, like
Yeah,
I thought it was gonna be a series, but it's not.
lame, positively lame.
So this was directed by a guy named Seong-Hoo Park. So I guess Koreans are finally getting their foot in the door and directing
Hmm.
anime. He worked on Jujutsu Kaisen, Zombieland Saga, Yuri on Ice, and The God of High School. Jujutsu Kaisen, pretty good looking show. Yuri on Ice, pretty good looking show. I have not seen Zombieland Saga. The God of High School? Does that constitute a good-looking show?
I believe people say that that show looked really good. It was just a
Mhm.
matter of the pacing that made it bad.
Yeah.
But the actual animation was good.
By the way, I'm looking through my notes. I don't think it's ever been explicitly stated that Ryuma and Zoro are related, but they definitely are. Ryuma
Yeah.
literally just looks like Zoro with black hair, especially the older design of his that you see when he's like hanging out with Kid Yamato in that flashback in Wano. They're definitely related, for sure.
Um, 6 out of 10. I would watch this if it was an anime.
I just realized that they retroactively did the same thing that they did with Luffy, where Luffy is like descended from this really strong group of people, just like how Luffy has like Dragon and Garp as his father and grandfather respectively. Zoro is like descended from one of the most powerful samurais from Wano.
Yeah. Well, I feel like it's not quite as bad because it's like, oh, he was his distant ancestor. That's
Well,
not quite as
actually,
bad
that's
as
the thing that was kind of confusing me is because how old is Ryuma supposed to be? Because we see him hanging out with Kid Yamato. So I'm assuming it wasn't like that long ago that he died. How old is Yamato supposed to be?
Huh. Yeah, that's a little strange.
Yeah, because it's
Kind
going
of
to be.
seems like they didn't think this out.
Yeah. Wait, I'm actually going to look this up. Yamato is 28 years old. So I would say that Ryuma died at the very least 20 years before One Piece actually takes place. because he was being held in prison by Kaido. But yeah, there you go. By the way, everyone, go and read the Romance Dawn one-shots. They are good.
Early One Piece is Kino.
Actually, the funny thing is, the Monsters one-shot has the art style of like classic East Blue era One Piece, but the Romance Dawn one-shots still have that, oh yeah, I'm totally not a Toriyama fanboy, guys, art style. The way Luffy's face is drawn in like one-shot version 1 especially gives me Dragon Ball Z vibes so hard. Oh yeah, actually now that I think about it, I forgot to mention that. Those one-shots have also been animated. Version 1 got animated as an OVA that is like a filler episode of the actual anime. That's how they chose to approach it there. They like integrated it into the canon of the actual anime. And then version 2 is animated as like an actual AU scenario. Go check both of them out. They're pretty good.
That actually just reminded me. Man, I wish that they'd give Taita Kubo the same treatment Oda gets. Like, where is the zombie powder anime? Which, by the way, I don't think that is a one shot. I think that ran for like a good while and got unceremoniously canceled. So if anyone deserves his old manga to get adapted into an anime and properly finished, it's Taita Kubo. All right. The people have been clamoring for it. Everyone's been asking, where is the Isekai lightning round? Well, there's like 9 Isekai this season, so it is time once again for the Isekai lightning round. Okay. My instant death ability is so overpowered, no one in this other world stands a chance against me. Basically, a whole like school bus full of high schoolers gets transported to a fantasy world, and it's an isekai, but then also it's one of those like kind of edgy, like, ooh, it's a power, like at first it's fun, but actually there's a cost, and like this world is edgy and they kill people. But then the main character, just like independent of all this, just has the power to murder people with his mind. It's bad, but I kind of like it. I kind of like how they just continuously just build up characters as villains, and then they get one-shotted by the main character saying "Shinde" every time.
Shinde.
Pretty all right. It is funny though how like completely nonchalant the characters are about the fact that just people are getting murdered left and right, and like no one seems to really care that much. The wrong way to use healing magic. It's kind of interesting. I didn't think I'd like this one as much as I did. The cool kids at school get isekai'd, and the main character just happens to be standing in their vicinity and gets sucked along with them. But he's got like the super rare, cool, magical ability of healing. So he gets swept up by the healing core with their like super hardcore training, and he has to like continuously heal his muscles in order to get buff. It kind of falls into that genre of isekai that's been becoming increasingly popular lately, where it's less about the power fantasy and more about like the catharsis of watching the slow growth as they keep training. Pretty enjoyable.
Good.
Villainous level 99. I may be the hidden boss, but I'm not the demon lord. This is one of those ones where a super overpowered main character, and then there's like a bunch of doubters, and everyone's constantly shitting on them, and they just totally prove the doubters wrong by being super overpowered. I really enjoyed this one. The OP is also a banger.
Good.
Dr. Elise, the royal lady with the lamp. Here we have another returner manhwa, actually. This is based on a manhwa. It's a reverse isekai where, like, you watch this chick and she's getting in a plane crash and she's a doctor. But then at the end of the episode, it's like the twist is like, actually, she was reincarnated from a fantasy world. But double twist, she dies and then gets reincarnated back into that fantasy world right before she fucked up her life.
That sounds complicated.
It's like an isekai about like making use of her medical skills, and everyone's like, whoa, no one's ever done a procedure like this, and no one is like, wow, that's medical malpractice, you can't just do an experimental procedure, or is like, that's witchcraft, burn her. Pretty convenient. I do kind of appreciate that the main villain of this is the king, and he's not comically evil or good for no reason like a lot of isekai do. The main villain of this is the king, and he really wants her to like become the queen and marry his son, which was like, she was already engaged to him when she gets sent back, but she is like, well, that ended horribly, so like, I want to be a doctor this time. But the king is like, no, like, I see that now, like, you're actually like super mature and impressive now instead of being like a massive bitch like you were before. So like, I really want you to marry my son, and I'm going to basically strong arm you into doing this. It's all right. There's a lot of parallels with like the relationship to the seventh time loop, but it's like not even close. I don't like them as a couple nearly as much. Ishura. I don't really know exactly what was happening in this one, but it was crazy. There's like this samurai or like this swordsman who got isekai'd, I guess, and he just takes down an entire robot army, and there's like a giant robot. Oh, and then the crazy thing about this one is that the POV character is just this random chick who's a resident of this town that's getting ravaged by these robots. And like, you see her friend get killed in front of her, and it is one of the most graphic pieces of violence I've ever seen in an anime. Like, you see her arm getting broken, and the way like they animate it and the sound effects was actually like gut wrenching. It was really hard to watch.
Dang.
It was like kind of boring, but at the same time, like, if you're into like some just crazy bombastic fight set pieces, you might actually enjoy this. The weakest tamer began a journey to pick up trash. I think this is the slime one. There's like a really weak chick who tames a really weak slime, but it's actually like a really cool special slime. I don't know. It's fine. It's kind of just a bunch of nothing.
Nothing burger.
Yeah. Oh, here's the thing about this one. This is one of those isekai where there's absolutely no reason for it to be an isekai. The main chick, like, she's quote unquote isekai'd, but the person who got isekai'd is just a separate character that is in her brain that we can't hear. So occasionally the main character you'll hear like a little ding, and then the main character will be like, what? This is just like smartphones in our world? What? This is just like the tsundere archetype? It's so obnoxious. There's no reason for it to be a thing. It's really annoying.
Well, that sounds like a dynamic that could be done well if written right. But instead of the ping shit, you actually hear the actual character and the person talking back and forth internally. The reason why I say that is because when you compare it to Deadpool, there's this one story arc in Deadpool where Deadpool has a person that gets put inside of his brain, and he has to talk back and forth with that woman. And it's a pretty interesting dynamic because she's a morally upright person, so she's trying to stop Deadpool from being a murderous psychopath, and it's pretty funny and a great dynamic. I also like how it explores the psychology of Deadpool because Deadpool is actually a depressed man who is sad and lonely, and when she's removed from his brain, he's actually like really sad that it happened. So all this to say that that kind of dynamic can definitely be done well if the person knows what the fuck that they're doing.
No, yeah, I agree with you that dynamic can work. It's just that this was not a good execution of it. I mean, it's fine. It's fine. Fluffy Paradise. So the premise of this one is just that there's a chick who dies and gets to choose her isekai power. And she's like, I've always seen like lions and stuff and really wanted to pet them and snuggle with them, but they're wild animals, which would kill me. So I want the ability to pet animals. And the god is like, okay, I will give you the power to be liked by all non human creatures. And so most of the anime is just her petting fantasy creatures. But I have to call attention to the fact that, so like her main mission given by this god is that she's supposed to like resolve the conflict between humans and monsters, because actually like this power just extends to like all monsters like her. And monsters in this world are like fully sentient. Like she's like, they're like full on having like negotiations between like the goblins and the humans. And her solution to the monster problem is to round up the monsters and put them in camps and then have the humans hunt the monsters if their populations get out of control. Do we see any issues with this premise considering the allegory taking place here?
I don't know, man. That sounds kind of based. There's this one guy who I thought that was pretty cool that did something pretty similar to this in like the 1940s. You might have heard of him. He's kind of badass. His name is Adolf Hitler.
This was so bad that even like all the comments on 9 anime were saying like, wait, isn't this kind of fucked up?
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, she's not a vegan, which is pretty crazy. Consider she's like friends with these birds and stuff, and she's eating chicken. If this is like being not a vegan in the world of Pokemon, like you have to be a vegan in the world of You can't be like eating roast Pikachu for dinner.
Well, I mean, you say that, but they definitely do eat meat in that world. That's like almost undeniable.
Yeah, but in the anime they're like birds are real that aren't Pokemon that one time.
Hmm.
So maybe they're just eating actual chicken.
Maybe.
But I'm just saying.
It's a lot funnier to imagine that they're fucking cooking Spearow.
Yes. All I'm saying, those are sentient creatures.
Now I just want a Pokemon game where like you have like your carnivorous Pokemon, so you have to hunt down some Pokemon with the express purpose of killing them and feeding them to your fucking like Incineroar.
Well, that's pretty much what Pal World does, doesn't it?
I have no idea.
I think that's pretty much what Pal World is.
You can feed other Pokemon or powered monsters to your powered monsters.
I know you can kill pals.
Huh.
I assume you can roast and eat their meat since it's a survival game, which is a very interesting choice on their part. Sasaki and Peeps. So this is about a middle-aged salaryman, which is kind of interesting. He's like in his 40s, and he decides to adopt a pet because he's super overworked. And he adopts a bird that turns out to be a wizard that got isekai as a bird. And then the bird teaches him to like open up a portal to this fantasy world. And he decides to get rich by doing trade between the real world or his world and this fantasy world. You ever just feel like you're being condescended to by an anime.
Yes.
I fucking hated this isekai. It's so it's so it's so fucking condescending. The way there's a certain way like the characters talk where everyone's just really nice. Everyone's just really happy and nice to each other. And then like oh, it does the thing I was just complaining about, where like the nobles are all just like super humble and nice. Like, oh yeah, sure, all the nobles are just gonna be like super chill, cool dudes who are like totally on board with like the plight of the peasants. Like, oh yeah, sure. Like it's to be clear, like I don't like it when they're like one-dimensionally evil either, but at least make them like a three-dimensional character is all I'm saying. And then there's like a a organization in our world for people with psychic powers, and he joins that for some reason. And there's like his handler who's a massive bitch for no reason. Okay.
Mhm.
And then so like at least in something like Mushoku, maybe Mushoku's not the best example, but you know, in these isekai where they get reincarnated as like a kid and they get with a young love interest, even if I don't fully buy this, you can have the excuse that like, oh, he's mentally a kid again. He's got the brain chemistry of a child, so like it's actually okay. And he has three middle schooler love interests. His handler is like, oh, it turns out I'm actually a middle schooler and I just work as a, a handler at this secret organization. And then his neighbor is a middle schooler that like has a crush on him for no reason. No fucking reason. And then he meets the princess or like the count's daughter or whatever in the fantasy world, and she's also a lolly, and she is super into him for no fucking reason. I hate this shit. I
I
can't
don't know about
believe.
I don't know about you, Arlon, but that sounds pretty base to me.
Oh yeah, well you would say that, Miss Vosh Defender, gushing over magical girls super fan. Tamika likes to draw. Lamau. Yeah, 1 out of 10. Meitou Isekai no Yu Kaitakuki. Around 40 Onsen Mania no Tensei Saki wa Nonbiri. Onsen Tengoku deshita.
What is
This
that?
is just porn. This is just a porno that got cut down, I guess. It's just like a dude is in a hot spring and then a girl gets in his lap and it's an isekai, I guess. I liked it more than Sasaki and Peeps.
But is it harem labyrinth type porn?
No. It is not that well animated.
Dang.
And that is all the isekai in the isekai lightning round.
I just find it really funny that a lot of shows are just becoming weirdly more bold. They're just like, yeah, sex.
Well, I think this was actually like a hentai that they just cut down and made into an OVA or
Oh,
something.
oh.
Because like it's the setup for like a sex scene, and then it just cuts to after, and that's the whole thing basically.
You got duped into watching a hentai.
Yes, I got duped into watching a hentai for the plot because I did not watch the sex. A lot of isekai this season, I know it sounded kind of negative. A lot of them were pretty good. Not Sasaki and Peeps, obviously. I watched Sasaki and Peeps because it was one of the top-rated anime this season. That is so upsetting to me.
Mm-hmm.
A few of those were good though.
Isekai, hit or miss. Sounds about right.
Yes. Yes. And that's all the anime. What did you think of this season, Coco?
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed listening to the last seasonal discharge we're ever doing. Personally, I think this was a great series of podcasts that we've done. Well, anyways, in all seriousness, what did I think about this season? Well, once again, I've probably missed out on the best that the season actually has to offer. Uh, the
Because
show
you
that I,
got duped by the thumbnails.
the
You
show that,
fool.
the show that I probably enjoyed the most was Motto, but I don't even really count that because Motto is a show that I already know about because I've read the manga, and the manga's better. So go read that. Um, uh, Gushing over magical girls was total trash. I can't believe that there are people who are hyped for this. Metallic Rouge. Just explain what the fuck you're doing. Was pretty well animated, I guess. Yeah, I thought it was. I thought it was another season of anime.
Well, I'm sorry you didn't enjoy it, Coco. I think this is the first time we've really been so incongruous on our experience. Because I feel like usually when you're super dead inside and hated the season, it's not like I was super into the season either.
Well,
But
well, right now I only sound dead inside because I'm actually tired.
it seems like you didn't enjoy the season very much, right?
Yeah,
So yeah, I had a very different experience because I'm an isekai head, and there were so many isekai this season. So I've been eating really good. I get to watch a new show, a new episode of something every day. Although it has been like slowly like dwindling down as I drop shows. Like I dropped Fluffy Paradise over the whole putting monsters in camps thing about
Hmm.
4 episodes in.
No, you don't understand. It's meant to be like a reference to the Japanese internment camps. Eventually, they'll realize that what they're doing is wrong and they'll like repent for it.
I just hate when shows like take it as like a given that like, oh, this is good. That's why I dropped Realist Hero as well. That he was doing slavery. He was like, yes, we're going to keep the slave system, but like actually it's good because I'm making them teach their slaves now. And they just totally like uncritically just take that as a given that like, oh yes, this is a good thing. Like no one steps in to say like, isn't that kind of messed up?
Yeah,
That's my problem with a lot. I think that's part of why I feel condescended to with a lot of these
I
anime.
mean, it's kind of like when Ben 10 was like, "Oh yeah, segregating humans and aliens is based. Let's force the aliens to live underground."
Ugh, yeah. A lot of shows just kind of take for granted that like, well, it's the status quo, so it must be good.
Yeah,
But ignoring all of that, like I've had a lot of good shows I've been enjoying. I liked The Wrong Way to Use Healing Magic. I loved Seventh Time Loop. I've really been enjoying Level 99 Villainous.
yeah.
So, and then on top of that, I've been watching Keeping Up with Shangri-La, which, by the way, I feel like I may have underrated that show. That show is like ridiculously good.
Is that the bird head one?
Yes, that is the Birdhead one. That show is, man, it's just so well written. It's so interesting because it's like it's a video game story in universe, but it's so good that you can't help but be invested.
Damn, when are we getting the Aarlon review?
Well, I don't feel like I have like any interesting analysis to give about it, but yeah, it is great. And then Marshall is I've only watched an episode of Marshall, but Marshall, my God, what an excellent show.
I mean, episode 1 of season 2.
Yeah, I've only watched one episode of season 2, but holy shit, continuing to just be an absolute banger.
But Aarlon, you have yet to tell us if you return to the absolute masterpiece that is Reign of the Seven Spellblades.
No, I have not returned to that. I do kind of want to check out the light novel, but I have not done that.
Fair.
Yeah, I'd give this season like a 7, I think.
Mm-hmm.
It didn't have like a show that is like, it didn't have a show that like I would hang a poster of on my wall, which I would do for Marshall.
Yeah, I feel like that doesn't happen very often.
Yeah, that's rare. I would do that for Marshall. I'd do that for Shangri-La. So we've been getting some real gems this last year. I wouldn't do that for Seventh Time Loop, but that is a really solid show. So it's
You
not
know
like this
what
was a
I
bad
would hang on
season.
my wall? I would hang a picture of the full body Paizuri from Meitou on my wall, but I would have photoshopped the picture of my puppet on the main character's head.
Maybe that should be the thumbnail for this episode.
Yeah,
We'll look into that.
yeah.
Oh, and it's so funny. I keep forgetting that solo leveling was even a thing in this season. I forgot again as I'm talking about the season.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fine.
Oh yeah, solo leveling. That I would say that solo leveling was probably the best show that I watched. It's either that or Mata.
Yeah. All right season. Well, do you have any final thoughts, Coco?
No, that's about all I have to say. And that I guess we may potentially be changing our approach this next season so that we actually get the shit out on time.
Yeah. Hopefully we're actually gonna talk. This is actually gonna be a seasonal first impressions podcast instead of a I've already watched 7 episodes of every show I'm watching show.
Mm-hmm.
You can find me on TikTok at Aarlon with 2 N's. My YouTube, I think my YouTube is also Aarlon with 2 N's. It might be Homo Commodi. I'll link it. I think I've canceled my manhwa series. I'm just gonna make it into a long YouTube video instead, because it wasn't doing well enough to justify the work that was going into it. You can find my comic Big Billy's Adventure Everywhere at bigbilliesadventureeverywhere.xyz. There might be a new chapter of that coming out soon. It's at the top of my to-do list. What about you, Coco? Where can we find you?
You can find me in my bed.
Bruh. Well, we'll have the links in the description for Coco's various socials and stuff.
Yeah,
And I think that's it, right?
I do believe that is it.
All right.
Yeah, so for the one person who actually like keeps up with this podcast regularly, sorry for taking forever to get the Scott Pilgrim episode out.
We're working on it.
And
There's a lot of episodes in the backlog that some of them Coco has even finished editing and just hasn't put out yet.
and next up is probably live action Avatar, so look forward to that. That's
Bruh body.
definitely gonna be a thing. We were gonna do an episode on live action Yu Yu Hakusho, but then I was like, I don't want to. So that we didn't.
Well, I'm glad you didn't because we need to watch, good Yu Yu Hakusho. So.
Yeah. Oh, And we might be doing an episode on the new Ultimate Spider-Man comic. So that's cool.
Yeah. Well, we better be. I'm kind of hyped for that. So.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks for watching. Everyone say bye.
Bye.
Bye.